Hey friends, it's Lauren Taylor. Thank you for joining me in my craft room today. I'm grateful to have you here for a Pretty Pink Posh video. I'm going to be creating a Valentine's theme card using some of the new products from Pretty Pink Posh's latest release. I have the Valentine Cupcake stamp set and coordinating dies, the Pierced Hearts plate die, and the XOXO heart border dies. I've also die cut my sentiment using the sentiment strip dies, and I stamped my sentiment from the new Sentiment Strips Valentine stamp set. I have all of my die cuts ready to go, and we're going to work on our background, then move on to some coloring, and then we will assemble the card. So I'm showing how I die cut all of my pieces out of different colors of pink cardstock, and I stamped my Happiest Valentine wishes in a brown ink. So like I said, let's start with the background. I die cut the Pierced Hearts plate die out of some light pink cardstock, and I have a blending brush and Kitsch Flamingo Tim Holtz Distress ink, and I'm just going to add a little bit of ink around all four edges of the card. Somehow I managed to get pink ink in the middle of my cardstock, but that just shows how messy I can be with crafting. After all four sides are done, I'll clean up my desk just a bit and I'll move on to adding my XOXO border to the card. I'm going to be doing some splattering and I want my metallic watercolor to show up on the border as well. I die cut the XOXO border out of some pink cardstock and 3 hearts out of some dark pink cardstock. I'm going to center my border along my card, so I only needed 3 of those hearts to have the darker cardstock color. Once all 3 of those hearts are glued in place, I'll go ahead and use my liquid adhesive again to add glue behind my border. And again, I'm going to center it so those 3 hearts will be centered on my background, so I only need glue up to the second to last X. I'm going to use my grid on my mat to help me get my background centered and also allow me to use it to try to get my border as straight as possible. I'm using that center heart to line up to the center of my grid and my card background. And once that's in place, I'll try to make sure it's centered and straight. That's definitely the upside of using liquid adhesive. Now that my border is on, I'm going to grab some metallic watercolors, and I wanted this pink color. So I'm adding some water and grabbing a brush to splatter on the pink watercolor all over my background. So I'm just going to tap it on until I get plenty of watercolor splatter. I really went crazy with it because I really thought the background could use some more interest, and I just love the shine that watercolor or metallic watercolors give on a background, and it will dry back a little and it won't be as crazy. I stamped 3 of the cupcakes. Again, this is from the Valentine Cupcake stamp set on some alcohol marker friendly white cardstock and an alcohol marker friendly black ink, and I use the coordinating dies to cut them out. I have them on a low tack sticky mat just to keep them in place while I'm coloring. I'm using Ohuhu Honolulu art markers. I prefer the Honolulu B as there is a brush and a nib tip, and I'm coloring in my images. I'm just going to show you a quick overview of each of the color combinations, and you can see the caps in the top left hand of the screen. If you have any questions about coloring with these markers or coloring combinations, make sure to let me know in the comments and I will come back and check to see if I can help with any of your coloring questions. The different color combinations I'm using, I have a dark kind of purpley red, and that is a mix of R350 and R340. Then I have more of a, I guess, wine pinkishy red color, and that is R290 and R280. And those are going to be the darkest colors that I use for my cupcakes here. I will bring in a little bit more of a redishy pink and a really light pink. So for the more redishy pink, which will be the details on my cupcakes, I'm using R240 and R230. I wanted to just bring in lots of redishy, purpley, pinky colors to match the colors of my card. Now I'm jumping into the chocolate, and for the chocolate, I'm using Y13 and Y12. I skipped over a little bit of the coloring because I also wanted to show you how I colored my strawberry top, because I will bring in a little bit of green to add in the details of the strawberry. Now the Y13 and Y12 is a bit of a jump between the two colors, so I definitely am saturating my paper with my lighter marker and doing my best to blend out that darker color into the lighter color just to avoid a harsh line. I still want it to have a cartoony look. That's why I love my Pretty Pink Posh stamps. They really are my personality of stamps. I love the kind of cartoony look of stamps. So I just really try to blend those together so they look nice together. And then for the light pink that I'm using to be the cupcake for this particular cupcake, and it was the frosting above, I'm using R050 first, which is actually my lighter color, but I wanted to get that color down. And then I brought in the darker R21 to be the shadow, to add in details of where I think shadow would be on the cupcake. And then finally, I'm bringing in GY2 and G130 to color in the top of my strawberry. I also really like to add highlights to my images, so I'm just going to quickly run through adding some white gel pen highlights. My favorite white gel pen is a Jelly Roll size 10, and I'm just adding in highlights on the sides of my images, anywhere where I think a light source could be hitting. I don't really have any kind of rhyme or reason to where I'm adding the highlights. I'm just adding it where I think it would look cute and where I would think something would be a little shiny if there was a light on it coming from the front. Now this cupcake liner, I imagine, has a lot of dimension on it, so I added more lines to really try to make it pop off the one dimension and look a little, or two dimension, and look more 3D. And finally, I'm adding my white gel pen on this last cupcake. I'm also using it to cover anywhere that I went outside the lines. That's my second favorite reason to have a white gel pen, is it hides when I get a little messy in my coloring. By now my background is dry, so I'll go ahead and trim off the excess of the border where it goes past the A2 edges of this pierced heart plate die background, and I'm going to work on gluing my sentiment together. So I'm going to layer all of these different pieces. I absolutely love the sentiment strip dies. It's definitely a staple. I use it on a lot of cards and a lot of projects because I love how there's different sizes and they all nest so well together. So you could just have, your typical sentiment strip that I have here stamped on white cardstock. You can kind of up it up a little bit with a rectangle die cut. There's also a banner, but my favorite go-to is after adding it to the rectangle, I add the scallop behind it. So it just creates a really fun layered sentiment. It gives you a little more interest than just having a simple banner. It really steps it up. So now I've added some foam adhesive to the back side of my sentiment, and I'll go ahead and use my grid again to try to get that nice and centered under my XOXO banner die. And before I move on, I thought it would be best to get this attached to a card base. So I'm using some adhesive runner, and then I will add it to a top folding A2 card base out of white cardstock. I did cut it a little too wide, so I just used some large scissors to trim off that excess white cardstock off camera. Now I'm going to layer my cupcakes together. I'm figuring out what order I want them. The difficult part of adding your images is which cupcake do I want centered? Which cupcake do I want to look like it's in the front? And once I'm happy with the layout, I'll go ahead and grab foam adhesive to attach these cupcakes just like I attached my sentiment strip. I'll cover the backs of this first cupcake since it will be in the far back. I'll go ahead and add foam adhesive completely behind it and tuck it into place onto my card background. Next, I added foam adhesive but made sure to not add any where it will overlap with the cupcake I attached on the right. And then I'll repeat that same process for my final cupcake, adding it on the left. It's turning out so cute. I'm absolutely loving the colors on this card, and I just think these cupcakes are so stinking cute. Finally, I'm going to add just a little bit more shimmer to the card by grabbing my strawberry shimmer confetti mix, and I'm using a jewel picker with a wax tip to pick them up, and then I will use liquid adhesive to glue them in place. I think this card is so fun, so pretty. It's perfect for a Valentine, but also maybe a Galentine in your life. Let me know who you would give this card to down below in the comments, and you can also find all of the pretty pink Posh supplies used on this card in the description box below. Here's one more final shot of this adorable pink and chocolatey filled card. It is definitely giving me a sweet tooth. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!